Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion Zoom In on DOE's Innovation and Scalability Plans, sponsored by Zoom on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guests today are Ann Duncan, the Chief Information Officer at the Department of Energy, and Lou Giglio, the Head of Federal at Zoom. Before break, we were talking a little bit about this collaboration and the idea of how it's changed and how in-person and online is important and has their pitfalls, but also their positive. And I want to start with you with this question: is how have you worked so the Energy Department employees just don't feel like they're lecturing? Ann Duncan is lecturing us one more time, and I can check Slack or other email, and I don't really have to. I can tune out. How have you created that ensure that there's collaboration, especially as we get more into the hybrid world too, of people in the office and on Zoom?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so hybrid is the hardest, right? So we'll start there, and then we can go back to sort of the more general statement. We're working on a number of technology solutions to help us make hybrid meetings more effective in terms of making sure it looks like, if you're on the out of the office, that everyone in the office is in individual squares, not just one big group of people that you can't really see, and I'm way down at the end of the table and you can't tell if I'm talking or not. So we're working on some technology solutions to make that better for hybrid meetings, first of all. And we're working to deploy those, pretty consistently across headquarters. And, we'll continue to evolve those as we get better solutions, because that space is going to keep evolving. No one's got that problem solved yet. So second thing is, how do we make meetings more interactive? Well, any meeting that's me talking to someone for 20 minutes probably should have been an email, right? So let's not even do that. But first of all, we want people on camera. I put my camera on, and I expect the rest of the team to be on camera so that you can see people's faces. I mean, that's not always the case. Yesterday, I was on some meetings driving back from Chesapeake. I decided it was probably not a good idea to be on camera. But generally speaking, if we can, we're going to get people on camera. We're going to try and make sure that the meetings provide opportunities to interact, that the conversations are substantive, right? So that there's something that people want to respond to and talk about and engage with. And again, if it's not a substantive conversation, we probably shouldn't be having the meeting. We're also, certain meetings, we'll call on people and bring them into the conversation. Right? When I have my weekly check-in with the leadership team, we have our conversation, and at the end we go around and check in, make sure no one else has anything else. So, some of those things are the same thing you do when people in a room, because frankly, you can have that same sort of lousy interaction in a room. But it just gets harder on video, particularly if people are off camera, and to make sure that people have the opportunity to be heard.
Have you also gotten to the point where instead of just calling someone, you're doing a link to say, hey, jump in on this link real quick and let's do a meeting? Because one of the things I think people miss, and we hear this often, is, well, I can't just walk into your office and be like, hey, Ann, knock, knock, can I talk to you real quick? But what you can do is still have that, hey, jump on this call real quick and we can see each other and have that conversation, versus I'll take my phone out and I'll call Ann and we'll answer. And you're finding that that's also something that's kind of developed? Yeah,
when we use chat, right, we can just click on the button in chat and start a call. And so a lot of times, usually people will say, hey, can you talk? But sometimes, particularly with some of my certain advisors, I just get a ringing phone on my desk, just like a regular phone, and then we can have a video chat or audio chat, depending upon where everybody is. And generally speaking, if it's after 5 o'clock, it's an audio chat, but during the day, it's usually a video chat, and we have that conversation at the spur of the moment. It's not quite the same as that hallway conversation that we have when we are in the office, which is nice that we are back in the office sometimes, but it definitely allows that spur of the moment conversation.
Lou, jump in as well, because when you talk to your federal clients and what you're seeing among them is, are they looking for that same thing to create that environment where the workforce is more engaged, if you will?
Fully integrated, yeah. Right? So right now we're working with 5 cabinet level agencies that are undergoing the Future of Work initiatives, right? And it's basically a research project, right? So it's been funded. That we've got some consultants that we're working with that we're being brought in, to talk about our technology. But this is something that we've been working on for 2 years, right, from an innovation standpoint. So the issue, Ann, that you were talking about, with that large VTC room, and you can see the 2 people sitting closest to the camera, and you can hear 1.5 people, out of the 20 that are in there. We've kind of solved for that, right? So within our software, we've got the ability to carve out of that room the squares, right? Those nice controllable squares that we talked about earlier, and that's a big deal, right? That's being able to see that person's face without having to kind of lip read or figure out who's talking. That's something that folks are actively consuming right now. The other thing that I would throw out there, you brought up the phone piece, and it's not always a great time for a video conference, right? I mean, there are times where maybe woke up late and hair's not going in the right direction, or maybe a miss button, or maybe even forgot to put a shirt on, right? So what I think, having that ability to just have that regular old call, that old school phone call, but consume it from a platform that is FedRAMP certified, IL4, the whole thing, right? So the Zoom Phone piece for us is a pretty big deal, right? It's kind of rounded out the portfolio along with the Zoom Rooms, the way that we the technology that I just talked about, being able to carve up those individual users in a giant room. And, oh, by the way, we can, kind of leverage all of the hardware investments that have been made over the course of years to work with that legacy equipment that's sitting in those rooms, right? So the software, it's an amazing thing, right? So
I want to talk about the legacy equipment, but let me just real quick back up one, because again, you said something that got my reporter's antenna going. The Future of Work initiative, I know you probably can't talk which 5 cabinet level agencies, or maybe you can, but what's the premise of that? Like, okay, what's it going to look like in 3, 5, 7 years? What's the technology today and tomorrow? Like, what's the basis of that discussion usually?
A lot of it stems from recruitment and retention, right? So there's been an exodus everywhere, right? Not just government, but in industry and the private sector. People are just they're retiring, taking on kind of the gig economy type stuff to make it work. So they want to be able to recruit and retain the best people, and I think that's part of it. Being able to compete, at least locally here in the DC area, there is no shortage of technology companies, right, to go to work for. And to your earlier point, Ann, it's a great thing to be able to flip back and forth, but you kind of want to keep your best people, right? So if work from home is an option, or work from wherever makes you happy is an option, then a lot of people are going to take that. I for one, I'm done with a commute. I can say at 48, I will not sit in a vehicle for more than 20 minutes to get anywhere at any time. And the technology that we use at work enables me to do that, right? So, I think that's where I'd kind of leave it off.
Lou brought up the idea of legacy technology. Old, you put in a VTC system 10 years ago, 5 years ago, Energy did. And are you starting to look at, okay, how do we move off of that? Do we need all this hardware these days? Can we do it as a SaaS solution? How are you looking at that, Ann?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, we've got some old systems that are just going to need to go away, that are not really capable of working in the new world that we're in now. But, we have also the ability to do a lot of work with the new technology we have in place, with our laptops, with the televisions we have in our offices, or the video displays. So there's a lot of options there, and it's true. A lot of the smarts aren't in the hardware, right? They're in the system that sits out in the cloud, whatever your provider is, that we're really able to get most of that capability from. And then we look at the accessories, like large displays, like good audio that help us make that whole system complete. And those are things that will be upgraded over time. But we definitely are still providing those capabilities in the office. We want to have that experience when people are in the office that makes sure that everybody is on a level playing field.
Lou, what's your take on that legacy piece? You mentioned it, it's one of the big challenges a lot of agencies
huge
are
cost
seeing.
from a CapEx standpoint, right? So you've got to maximize that life cycle, and being able to integrate to all of it, whether it be the VTC systems, the actual desk phones that are sitting out there. You've got to be able to leverage that stuff. I mean, there's no leader on the planet that is just going to throw out $5, $7, $10 million worth of hardware investments to change platforms, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So that's the scalable piece, right? It has to integrate. You've got to be able to do that. The other thing that I would throw out there, right, is that as SaaS, as a consumption of SaaS increases, right, and those on-prem applications kind of go away. Either living in a CSP or wholly consumed from a SaaS perspective, you've got to be secure, right? You can't be using platforms that are out there. There's no one that's going to take on a risk profile unnecessarily. So we've also seen an uptick in interest from civilian agencies, kind of centered around DoD level security, right? So impact level 4. Is something that is not just for DoD anymore, right? They're Not that requirements are being written to it, but it certainly helps the discussion. When you can make that statement.
I want to shift into, because we could talk much more about legacy, but let me shift over to this idea of the return to work. And you mentioned this briefly, the hybrid. You started off by talking about the hybrid workforce. First of all, where's Energy with the return to the office? And then how's that changing the way you think about this collaboration and innovation? I want to tie us back to the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, Energy is back in the office as much as we're going to be back in the office. And that varies from different offices across Energy as to when people are in the office, how much people are in the office. But we are back to that position. So it simply means that, well, first of all, I think it's hugely important to have people in the office. Not all the time, but and actually it doesn't have to be an office. What it has to be is a place where people can meet together and work together and collaborate and get to know each other and build relationships. That's the key. And from there, that's what's going to be key to helping us be more innovative. There's only so much relationship building and only so much collaboration you can do over video. And having that in-person relationship just ramps up your innovation capabilities. And then you put the tools in place to enable that to be more successful when you're apart.
All right, Lou, I'm going to give you the last word, maybe about 30 seconds or less. What's the big takeaway from our conversation today? What do you want your federal clients and other people in the public sector really to keep in mind about how innovation, collaboration can continue to evolve?
Absolutely. So regardless of what your return to work plans are, right? People are coming back. They have come back. We opened our offices. Zoom opened our offices back up. But we want to be able to provide a solution that is scalable, simple, and secure to the folks that are out there, regardless of how they consume it, where they consume it, what time of day they consume it, whether it be in person, whether it be hybrid, whether it be work from home. We feel like we're equipped pretty well to address the future of work. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to sit here with both of you today and chat a little bit.
All right. I know we could talk longer, but unfortunately we are out of time for today. So first, let me thank my guests, Ann Duncan, the Chief Information Officer at the Department of Energy, and Lou Giglio, the Head of Federal at Zoom. I'm Jason Miller, and you've been listening to Zoom In on DOE's Innovation and Scalability Plans, sponsored by Zoom on Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Zoom.